Hey Bahamas, today I want to talk about government and how it's about to be disrupted by technology, same as other major industries, and it's about time. But first I want to point out that the idea of a political representative initially came about out of a necessity at a time when townspeople couldn't afford to take a day off and ride a horse to the capital. They needed to agree upon one guy who would more or less say what they were thinking, and they voted to pick the right guy for the job. Horses became Model T cars, and Model Ts became jets to fly politicians from their home state to the capital, ostensibly to have an ear to the ground in their constituency and a hand to the buzzers on the Senate floor. But in the era of the smartphone, sending a man or woman to NASA to represent a constituency back home can feel about as forward-thinking as sending an intern to Zanzibar headquarters to pick up the new Rattler. So why do we still send politicians to NASA to read bills and press buzzers when it's now possible to rethink government as a digital platform? Hacktivists in the US are toying with implementing a so-called liquid democracy, and this concept known as liquid democracy holds the idea that every person has a right to provide feedback on a policy issue or a piece of legislation, but often people don't have the time to do so. Therefore, using a liquid democracy platform, voters can select a personal representative who has the authority to be a proxy for their vote, and this proxy can be changed at will as a voter's interests change. Those proxies can themselves proxy their votes to other people, creating a directed network graph, ideally connecting every voter to politicians, and all publicly verified on the blockchain. So while, for example, there may be a few thousand people in a district, potentially only a few hundred super proxies of a few thousand would need to be deeply engaged in the system for better representation to take place. Online direct democracy isn't a new idea. In Australia, a direct democracy app called Flux, built by Bitcoin enthusiasts using the blockchain platform, aims to let Australians tell proxy senators how to vote on laws. Flux, though a smartphone app, is also a party come election time, but once MPs and senators are elected, Flux representatives give up their autonomy to vote according to the people. They cast their votes in line with the outcomes produced by the Flux ecosystem comprised of Australian citizens. Through an app on the smartphone, Flux allows citizens to vote directly on legislation before Parliament. It's as simple as yes or no, or you can choose a representative to vote on your behalf, and that representative can be changed at any time. Flux works to keep decision makers accountable, but that's not all that makes Flux truly remarkable. By letting communities self-organize, naturally specialists will end up making decisions, not career politicians, and each individual of the general public will get more of a say on the issues that matter most to them. A similar model is already in use in over 1,000 governments and organizations around the world, called participatory budgeting. And participatory budgeting is a process that allows people to submit ideas for what government should spend a portion of its budget on, and then vote on the best ideas. This gives people direct control over a portion of a budget, and it enables taxpayers to work with government to make the budget decisions that affect their lives. Another issue that direct democracy addresses is that every political office already employs a staff paid by taxpayers who typically write bills. And today, they are hired and fired at will by an elected official who steers their work to what he or she believes or judges to be a priority, and political staffers are not hired transparently. With an app, staff hiring becomes more transparent. Headhunting firms could reply to a public request to bid for the challenge of interviewing candidates, and the people of the district could vote on their smartphones to hire both the headhunter and the candidates. The staff could also be appointed to rotating terms with a termination set by the vote of the people. Personality and political donations would be cut from the process, and candidates would be more accurately hired on merit. These staff members chosen by the people would be the ones to draft legislation, and what they're tasked to draft would not be chosen by the horse-riding politician, but rather through the people's will directly. Now let's talk about how we can enable a resident using their smartphone to easily bring about a problem in his or her community to a neighborhood's attention. First, that resident can begin by starting a petition on an app designed for that purpose, like for example, change.org. And those who click agree could upvote that petition in a Reddit-like user-driven forum. And once a certain amount of people click agree, the petition could go out as a text alert to other voters within a certain distance of the original poster. And with 50 or so more agrees, it could go out to a wider field and so on. Once a petition snowballs, the issue could go before administrators, who could then reach out to the initial petitioner to draft legislation. And finally, the legislation could be voted as ready by the majority of the electorate. Fixing an existing problem with new technology often fuels new and worrisome questions, and displacing power simply raises the same questions of control and ownership in new places. For example, even without politicians becoming susceptible to lobbyists, voters can still be influenced by special interest groups who can afford to bombard voters with their message. But by distributing the power for change among the electorate, a direct democracy model would effectively make lobbying efforts much more expensive and inefficient. But still, displacing power raises questions of how informed our progress can be. We want our representatives to know the law and to speak with experts using paid time that their citizens lack. And yet some voters might be more informed than a personality politician who runs an anti-intellectual campaign. The architecture of our app could try to correct the problem because, unlike a ballot box in a high school gymnasium, our app could require our electorate to engage with an issue. For instance, before casting a vote, voters could be required to spend a certain amount of screen time reviewing prospective legislation, just as a company requires employees to view a simple HR video. Or we can decide as a community to hire an outside monitoring group to review the legislation and report to voters its potential effects. And those who develop any app that allows us to govern directly would have to take into consideration how it might function to counter personality politics and to combat misinformation. And then there's the question of who could afford to develop and distribute the system, to control and protect it, and to allow for its ongoing modification in the service of the people. For this, I look to where our founding fathers looked, and that is to the will of the people. If the app can allow the people to govern themselves, can the people not also govern the app? Setting up a foundation, collectively deciding on hires, and in short, founding a cooperative? These are factors among others to be considered, but I have two ideas about how we can get started. First, a politician can put forward a referendum along the lines of approving for the public funding of an administrative office and the distribution of smartphones to the people of each constituency, so that those constituents can begin to put forward legislation directly and to vote directly, issue by issue. Because of course the first problem is how to get a phone and a free phone plan into every hand. Or a candidate can run on a platform of direct democracy and pledge that if he or she wins, that they vowed to set up a system for us to truly rule ourselves. Voters crave transparency. We crave an end to political photo ops. We crave an end to the influence of political media. And we want to drive the gratuitous cash out of politicians' pockets. As a citizenry, we exercise relatively little power to destroy lobbying, to reform pay-to-play, to transform the media industries, or to temper the bad behavior of the wealthy and powerful. But today, our new technologies mean that there's one central component that we might have power to remove completely from government, and that is to remove the traditional role of politicians. With the rise of open source software and peer-to-peer networks, political intermediation is no longer necessary. We should look to build an open source and decentralized democratic system. So think about it. Think liquid democracy. Vote on issues you care about and choose to delegate power to those you already trust. Think to own your own data. Sign in with keys only known to you and a blockchain, and not Big Brother as we know it. And think participatory budgeting with Bitcoin and smart contracts. So rather than electing someone who we may not feel entirely connected to represent our interests from afar for 5 years, we now have the opportunity to vote directly, issue by issue, on our smartphones, and to cut out the cash pouring into political races, and to embody the highest ideals regarding the will of the people. This system, like any new technology, faces challenges, including voter apathy, lack of knowledge, as well as the possibility for deliberate misinformation and manipulation. These issues will have to be resolved over time. But yet today's system is not designed to serve us. It's not designed to empower us. Blockchain-based democracy offers a solution whereby voters are empowered. We often talk about rooting out the corrupted and stagnant system that governs us today. And we say that the future of governance is one based on transparency and accountability, and one where we the people are empowered. Well, now let's return the power to where it belongs, to you. And let's work to rid party politics and make more of a true celebration of democracy. Thanks for watching this video. I'm Eden Mary Gator. If you like this video and you've yet to follow me on social media, I'll provide you with the information to do so that we can continue the larger conversation. I love you, Bahamas, and I'll see you soon.